South Africa seems to be stuck between a rock and a hard place here because regardless of what they do, there will be some kind of repercussions. So South Africa is set to host the BRICS summit next month. But there's a catch here. Democratic Alliance, which is the country's key opposition party, has filed an application in court seeking Russian President Vladimir Putin's arrest if he plans to attend the summit in Johannesburg.
Right, and this is as per the International Criminal Court for war crimes. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has filed an affidavit in response to this application. He has expressed his stance, saying that arresting Putin would be, and I'm quoting here, reckless, unconstitutional and unlawful exercise. Furthermore, President Ramaphosa also added that arresting Putin would be a declaration of war on Moscow.
Now, as the BRICS summit is only little over a month away, South Africa is divided over Putin attending the BRICS summit. While some support the Russian president's visit to the country, others are of the opinion that he should be arrested immediately.
Now, President Ramaphosa has maintained his stance on his government negotiating a peace deal with Russia as well as Ukraine. As the court arrives on a decision, the International Criminal Court in the month of March issued an arrest warrant for Putin, and as a member of the ICC, South Africa is obligated to arrest the Russian president. The question is, will South Africa arrest Putin? Now, for more on this, we have with us foreign policy analyst Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at School of Advanced International Studies, Johns Hopkins University, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Now, sir, my first question to you, as we mentioned, seems like South Africa is stuck between a rock and a hard place here. If they do arrest Putin, they risk war with Russia. If they do not, I'm sure there will be some implications for that as well. How do you assess this situation?
I think this is very good news. This dilemma for South Africa is very good news for anyone in the world who cares about peace, who cares about human rights, who cares about food on the table. Because we see now Russia, Vladimir Putin, reneging on his commitments negotiated by the UN for grain to be exported through the Black Sea, Ukrainian grain to feed people in Africa and in other parts of the world. So anyone who's concerned about that, who wants food on the table, who wants reasonably priced energy, should be encouraged by this dilemma that South Africa faces, because we see now the South African president is under pressure, not from the United States, not from the European Union or NATO, but from his own country within South Africa. The largest opposition party has filed a petition for South Africa to follow its obligations as a party to the International Criminal Court, which has a strong relationship with the United Nations and was negotiated within the United Nations. So South Africa has an obligation, actually, to arrest those who are indicted, as is President Vladimir Putin. And the dilemma that the South African president faces shows the weakness of Vladimir Putin, because we see now that there are steps and proposals being taken by South Africa to try to avoid the dilemma in the first place, including potentially holding this BRICS summit virtually, online, or leaving Vladimir Putin out. So this is all very positive indicators of Vladimir Putin's weakness. Please.
Edward, now South Africa is a signatory to the International Criminal Court. Now, if Putin decides to attend the summit in person, what would be the implications for South Africa if they don't arrest Putin?
Well, we see there's going to be international and domestic implications here, because, again, I can't emphasize this enough for your viewers. The pressure is not just, oh, it's this the outside powers and the United States throwing their weight around. We see the pressure coming from within South Africa itself, the largest opposition party wanting South Africa to stand up and honor its obligations under the as a party to the International Criminal Court. So there'll be domestic political implications for the South African president. And obviously, there'll be wider implications for the reputation of South Africa. How can it speak to questions of human rights elsewhere in the world or on the African continent, where it seeks to be a leader, when it allows a warmonger who has, in unprovoked way, invaded a neighbor, a member of the United Nations, and who now is threatening hunger around the world by backing out of this UN brokered agreement for grain. So this will be very bad for South Africa. They will emerge looking very bad. And that's why this is all a good sign. And hopefully South Africa will move to a situation where Vladimir Putin will not be represented at that BRICS summit at all. Please.
Right. So in fact, I was just going to come to this. You've spoken about how South Africa, this may reflect on South Africa. But given the scenario that Putin does not attend the summit in person, how would that reflect on Russia? Do you think it highlights or it gives an impression of fear of arrest?
Absolutely. It shows the isolation of Vladimir Putin. It shows that he's a pariah. He's unwelcome. He's a weak leader. This is what's so important. Remember the image of Vladimir Putin before February 2022 when he made this catastrophic decision to invade Ukraine after being warned, specifically warned by the United States and its EU partners, by President Macron of France, who went to Moscow, sat at that gigantic table, remember the comically long table, and explained to Vladimir, don't do this. You're making a mistake. Well, he did, and now he's suffering the consequences. So are his citizens, and of course, obviously the citizens of Ukraine, which are under savage bombardment and invasion. So yes, he looks very weak, and he looks especially weak. Remember this attempted mutiny within Russia by Mr. Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group, who challenged not only the incompetence of the Russian military, which is under Vladimir Putin's leadership, but also the basis for the war itself. He basically said, Prigozhin, that it is a lie, based on a lie. Please.
Thank you for all your inputs, Edward. That was Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at the School of Advanced International Studies, Johns Hopkins University.
You're welcome.